Hi everyone, it's Paul from This Designer. Today we're going to be building this DIY tripod head. Now the reason I'm doing this is that I recently upgraded my camera rig. I've got it in a cage and I've got it sitting on it's a Miller CX6 tripod head. I've got a Miller tripod with it. It's quite an upgrade. I was using this, I think this is about £25, cheap Amazon tripod head. With all of my accessories and all of my tripods, I did have these quick lock connectors. And I really like these things because they take the Manfrotto plate and you can just stick these on pretty much any tripod or anything and you can easily remove them. The problem is that since I've upgraded to the Miller CX6 tripod, it's a much bigger, beefier tripod head, and it takes these dovetail plates, which I'm sure you've probably seen if you've got a larger camera rig. The problem with these dovetail plates is that they do not fit into these quick connectors, and basically these dovetail plates, they don't fit into any photography level tripod heads, which is pretty much what all of my equipment was before I got the Miller CX6 tripod head. So it always seems the case when you upgrade something, you need to upgrade other things to accommodate the new upgrade. I didn't really want to go ahead and buy new tripod heads that could accommodate these dovetail plates because from what I could see online, everything was very expensive. You know, these are aimed at kind of production level cameras, and I couldn't find any cheap tripod heads that I could mount onto my other tripods. I use tripod heads downstairs when I'm recording my Drift Deeper shows. Basically, I like to have multiple tripods set up so I can just quickly unclip the camera that I'm using and then just mount it onto different areas in the house where I'm shooting. So I thought, you know what, let's try and make a DIY version. I've got some scrap aluminium, I've got some scrap wood and some scrap plywood sitting around from my shed build that I'm in the process of doing. And I wanted to see if I could just put something together that was robust enough to hold my new camera rig. Now I've just put this on the scale and I've got external monitor, I've got a V-mount battery, I've got a cage, I've got an S5, Lumix S5 camera. All of that together is about 5.5 kilograms, so it's quite a lot of weight. And with just one very small tweak that I'll show you later in the build, I can hold that setup on this DIY mount and it holds it confidently. I am not worried about this breaking or falling over. It's a very simple build, just bits of plywood. I've got some pocket holes and some glue fixing this top section. I've gone ahead and just done some various different materials purely because I just wanted to get my feet wet with some CNC machining again. Part of the dovetail bracket, I've got a little quick lock latch here and I've got a dovetail set up so you can see that this can just drop in basically. If you loosen this, you can drop it in and then I can just tighten it with a latch and then it's not moving, it's locked in place. So I really like that. I was quite happy of how that come out. You could machine the entire thing, you could probably 3D print the entire thing. So let's jump into the build and I will show you how I made this. But before we do that, I just want to take a few seconds to thank the sponsor of this channel, PCBWay. They offer services for all types of makers from PCB, CNC, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, and more. What's more is that most of these services are available with fast worldwide shipping and very fast lead times. And be sure to check out their KiCad open source contest where you can win up to $100 and a Raspberry Pi 5. Submissions are open until the 2nd of June, and head over to PCBWay.com for more info on this contest and their other services. So we're going to start off with cutting the metal part of this build. This is just some aluminium stock bar that I've got laying around. If you've not seen any of my CNC videos in the past, this is a Suanda Machineworks mod vise. I really like this thing. It can hold pretty much any size stock, any sort of thickness. It's really versatile. I'm using a 2-flute end mill to do the roughing operation here, and then I'm coming in with a 6mm ball nose end mill, and this is just to cut the dovetail geometry that you can see here, and I'm also adding some chamfers to the holes. Flipping it over, I just machine off the rest of the stock, and then I'm just adding a chamfer around the edges here. Lastly is just to drill a hole through the middle, and this will accept the threaded latch that I'm going to make next. This is probably one of the better pieces that I've machined on this CNC. Reason being is that my Mac 3, it seems to always end up crashing, especially when I'm doing tool changes. So I was really happy that this one went without too many hiccups. Now, because of the awkward geometry, I decided to 3D print this next part, and I'm using some ABS-like resin. And because of all of the holes, different angles, different orientations, this would have been a bit of a nightmare to have machined on my CNC. And this came out really nicely. You can see that I've got these holes on the side here, and these will be used for the springs. So you can see how this goes together. I've 3D printed a eccentric latch here just with some threaded rod, and this is what is going to push that metal part in and out. So I've got the springs, and then I add the metal part of the dovetail clamp, and you can see that by using an eccentric latch here, I can move this metal part in and out, which will essentially apply the clamping force to the dovetail plate. Now it's time to make the wooden parts of this tripod head. I'm using just some scrap plywood and some timber that I had left over from my shed build. I'm using wood glue and pocket hole screws to make the top section of this tripod head, and pocket hole screws matched with wood glue makes an incredibly strong joint. This is a larger hole that I will use to add a gripper to the inside of the tripod head. This didn't really work out too well, as I'll show you in a minute. As I'm going to be bolting this tripod head to a shelf that I've got in my living room, I needed a way to add some sort of thread to the bottom of this tripod head. So what I've done is I've 3D printed a M6 nut, and then I'm just gluing it into the bottom. It would have been better to have used maybe a wooden threaded insert, but I did order them and they didn't come in time, so I'm just going with a 3D printed method. Now I'm just drilling the holes to attach this top dovetail clamp into this wooden part and bolting it in, and you can see how this goes together. Next is just adding the 3D printed nut holder so that then I can secure these pieces. So you can see how this works. As I clamp it tight, the grippers on the inside of this tripod head, they will bite into each other with their teeth. The problem is that I noticed that as I started moving it, there was some white dust on the bottom of this shelf. So I took it apart and I noticed that, as you can see, the ABS-like resin is starting to wear away already. So these teeth are probably not going to last very long. So I took a look at some of the light holders that I've got, some of the yokes, and I saw that actually they used a little rubber disc in between these two gripper parts. So I've got my X2F1 here, I'm just cutting some rubber. I've got a disc, and now I'm adding it back in between those gripper teeth. And as you can see, it does a much better job of holding this. So there we go, that's how I made this DIY tripod head. It does what I need it to do, which is basically hold a heavy camera rig at just small degrees of tilt. I don't really need this to be kind of pointing downwards. This is really just sitting on a shelf and it's just kind of framing the room as I record my shows. There are definitely some things that could be done to improve the design of this. I think relying on a 3D printed threaded nut at the bottom of this, probably not the best way to go. I think I would hopefully replace it with maybe a wooden one or maybe a metal one, or maybe I could even just put some nuts through the wood into the 3D printed part just to hold it in place. To be honest with you, I probably trust the wood glue more than I trust the 3D printed part. And if I had a little bit more time, I probably would have tried to make the whole entire dovetail clamp out of metal. The ABS-like resin, it is quite brittle, and I worried if I keep on obviously tightening it down, it could crack. I have added a little bit of a stress relief at that dovetail angle, which should hopefully help. So it'd be interesting to see how this holds up. I'll put the 3D files up on Thingiverse if anyone wants to take a look at it, or perhaps make their own or remix it or anything like that. Any questions, feel free to ask. But that is it for today. I will end it there.